Well, hello, I'm James, and today I wanted to share some thoughts about failing and failure. Uh, and before I get to those, I thought I would remind you you are infinitely precious and unconditionally loved for the gift you already are, failures and all. Uh, I think in many ways the word failure is one that we think of as a bad word. When someone fails, we tend to attach a negative value to that, and I think that's just part of being alive. Failing is an opportunity to grow and learn, and I'm going to share a little bit about that. But I'm also going to share something that I consider to be very important, and that is that while we can use the noun failure in reference to some event or mistake we've made, we ought never to use it as a label for ourselves or anyone else. Negative labels don't do any good for anyone. Oftentimes, our negative labeling of other people is about making ourselves feel better about our own mistakes. However, we need to work on that and letting go of any need that we perceive in ourselves to label someone else, especially with the word failure, or to label ourselves as failures. It's not helpful. It's simply not helpful. Everyone has failed at some point in their lives, but labeling the series of, even a series of failures in a person's life as making that person a failure is to miss the most important truth, which is nothing less than love gets to label you or name you. So failure is not who you are. It may be something that you occasionally do, which would make you human like the rest of us. So I wanted to caution about labeling anyone a failure. However, I try to look, now if you're in the midst of what you perceive to be a massive failure in your life, you are going to have a very difficult time seeing that failure as a gift. So you might want to turn away. Heck, you may have already turned away from this video before now because you didn't need one more person telling you to get over it or to learn from it or whatever it may be. Because in the moment of something that you or I perceive as a major failure or a massive failure, whatever, our perceptions of those are going to be different based on who we are. But when we perceive a major failure, the last thing we want is someone trying to give us some advice about that and tell us that every failure can be a gift if we learn from it. And that's what I try to do with my failures. Today in my personal blog, I was writing about a baking failure in my life, which was during the pandemic when I was trying to learn to make bread. And gluten-free bread. Other kinds of bread, I'm not saying are easier or simpler. I'm simply saying that gluten holds most wheat, rye, and barley breads together in ways that they're without gluten, the bread doesn't quite hold together in the same way. So you have to find some creative ways to do it. And so when I was writing about that failure, what I talked about is how I learned from it and ultimately finally have what I consider to be a pretty solid recipe for either 5 or 6 different kinds of flour, gluten-free bread that I like to make. But failure is an opportunity for us to reflect. When we fail at something, it gives us an opportunity to say, maybe what did we do wrong? Or is this really something we should be doing? And if it really is something that we want to do or perceive that we want to continue to do, we're going to have to figure out from the failure how to move forward, how to make that next step. So we learn a little bit about what we're made of. We learn about how resilient we are, how long it takes. And I think the more we learn to see failures as gifts, the more failures that when they come our way, we learn to get over those failures more quickly, to be more resilient, perhaps. So, what are the failures what are they teaching us in our lives? What are the things we can learn from them? And if we find ourselves labeling somebody else for their failings, what is it that we need to learn about ourselves that makes us feel okay or good about labeling that other person for their failings? Perhaps they're even the same failings that we have, and maybe it's just a way of putting off our feeling of failing onto somebody else, and then we don't have to feel so bad ourselves. Again, all of that is stuff if you work at it, if you take seriously everything that happens in your life, the successes and the failures, quite frankly, my failures have been the times I learned the most. Because it really gave me pause to step back, ask who I am. Was this something I really wanted to do, was really called to do, really felt needed to be done? And if it was, how could I do it a different way? How could I think outside of whatever box I had used to design the first thing that failed? And heck, sometimes a failure is a complete accident. You do everything right and it still fails. Whatever right is, correctly is. But so if indeed failing is an opportunity to learn and eventually can be seen as a gift once you're past it and you're looking at the lessons it brought into your life, then perhaps instead of constantly living in fear that you'll fail, so not trying anything in life, you can try it with the caveat in your mind that perhaps I might fail at this. And instead of spending the next 10 months planning how I can avoid every possible failure in this, maybe I should just try. Now, there may be some things you shouldn't just try without any concern for failure. For instance, jumping out of airplanes. Skydiving is something you really need specialized training for. And even then, apparently, someone told me recently that statistically, 1 in 10 people freeze up when it comes to pulling their cord when they jump out. That is not a model for continued business for people who are teaching and doing skydiving. So they found some workarounds to that piece that was a failing, if you will. A fairly deadly one for those whose parachute they didn't open. So what can we learn from our failings? How can we receive that failing as a gift? Maybe it's something we realize we were just trying because we were going along with the crowd, and it's not something that is really about who we are. And then we can just let it go and not do it anymore. Or maybe it becomes the challenge point that says, I'm not leaving this here. I'm going to figure out a way to make a difference. And that's when failure becomes a real learning tool. Instead of a way of labeling myself, therefore creating all this negative energy inside myself and negative thoughts about myself, I say, first of all, everyone fails at something, sometime in their life. I don't care who they are. And what do those failures get to teach me? Now that I've already failed, I can't fix it, can't go back in time. That's just not a possibility. What can I learn from that failure? And if it is that I shouldn't do it anymore or never try, well, and that really is something we come to, then that's what we do. But perhaps there is some other way or some other person that might help you get yourself realigned and try some different kinds of things. Failure is an invitation to discover more about yourself, about how resilient you are, about how you can solve the problem, if it's a problem, differently in your life in a way that doesn't fail. So I want to invite you to see failures in your life when they come as an invitation to reflect and an invitation to learn and to grow, because we all get a chance to fail forward. And that can be a real good learning experience. But under no circumstances, even if you fail in succession on a number of different things, should you ever allow yourself to label yourself as a failure. Those labels are not helpful. Labeling yourself or anyone else, again, is not helpful. However, I'm going to put something on you right now, which is my weekly regular reminder, which is you are infinitely precious. You are infinitely precious, immeasurably so, incomparably so. You don't have to compare yourself with anyone. What makes you you is what also makes you infinitely precious, because it's unrepeatable. So that's you. You are infinitely precious and unconditionally loved for the gift you already are. Keep that in mind. And if you're failing and you don't want to hear my words right now, maybe this is something you can revisit later, or maybe you can just ignore it. I don't know exactly what the best thing for you is, but everybody fails. Everybody fails, and failure is often an opportunity to learn a lesson in a better way than multiple successes ever are, from personal experience. So give it a shot. If the thought is helpful, great. If it's not, okay. In any case, hope you'll have a great day and week wherever you